Commissioner Christine Elow makes history, but it's her story about how she made it to Top Cop that's truly inspirational. On our final installment of our Celebrating Black Excellence series, we sit down with the newly appointed police commissioner for the city of Cambridge. That's coming up next on the PowerPLAY Show.
From the studios at Hellbait Productions, this is Season 3 of the PowerPLAY Show. Now, here's Tonya McGrath.
Welcome to the PowerPLAY Show. I'm Tonya McGrath. In my final installment of my Celebrating Black Excellence series, I am so proud to introduce City of Cambridge Police Commissioner Christine Elow. Commissioner Elow joined the Cambridge Police Department in 1995 after serving in the United States Navy for 4 years. She served in the Patrol Division and oversaw the Professional Standards Unit, where she was responsible for receiving, processing, and investigating complaints made against other members in the department. She later served as Deputy Superintendent for Day Patrol and Community Services. In 2017, Elow was appointed superintendent, making her the highest-ranking female officer in the history of the department. And then just last month, they made it official when she was appointed police commissioner, making her the first woman to hold this position. Commissioner Elow is a strong proponent of community-driven policing, juvenile justice issues, procedural justice, police training, and innovative hiring practices. She holds a bachelor's of science degree in criminal justice administration from Curry College and a master's degree from the Naval Postgraduate School Center for Homeland Defense and Security Program. I am so proud to welcome Commissioner Christine Elow, I should say, to the PowerPLAY Show. Commissioner, welcome.
Good morning, Tonya. Thank you for having me. What a great introduction.
Very, very well deserved. Now, Commissioner, how does that feel? Do you turn around and wonder, who are they talking to?
Girl, yes, all the time. And it feels a little uncomfortable. I have this office. I blurred the background, but I have this, it's like a scene. And it's just, it really is unbelievable to me. And just never thought I'd be here, but really feeling very blessed that I am here.
Well, and I make light of it, but you have put in some impressive work to get to this position, and it is so well deserved. What made you want to become a police officer in the first place?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Now, this was not a lifelong dream of mine. This was not something that I can say, I wanted to do this since I was a child. I really kind of stumbled into it. I was kind of a lost young soul. After I got out of high school, I wasn't ready for college, and I went into the military. And then when I came out of the military, what I really wanted was a steady job that could pay, my bills. And a lot of people, working class people, were taking the police exam. That's what I did. Had the military on my side, so I was number one on the list and just kind of stumbled into it.
You think about the military and we hear all these kind of stories is it really a place for women? But you made it. I mean, you did really well in the military. What was that experience like?
The military was hard because I was, I would say a young, immature teenager with a big attitude. I went in there thinking like my children now, I know it all, you can't tell me anything. And they really had to knock that attitude out of me to really make me kind of conform to some of the ways. So it was challenging, but I think where I work well is having the structure, having the discipline. And that is really, I think, my sweet spot for me. So the military was challenging, and I knew pretty much, I'll tell you, Tonya, the first day I was like, okay, I'm counting my 4 years down now. I am not re-enlisting. It was a tough experience, but I made it through.
Who are some of your heroes growing up? Did you see many women or women of color as police officers? Who were some of the people that inspired you growing up?
Sure. I will absolutely say my biggest hero is my mom. My mom, when she divorced my dad, she was a high school dropout. She had to go back to school. She was raising 3 kids, and she just really showed me what grit and determination really can yield. And she just put my work ethic is really all about her. And still to this day, I think we struggle with hiring women in policing, and we're trying to do a lot of work now I think even in Cambridge, I think we're just at 10%. I mean, women are 50% of the population, or 51% of the population, and we're struggling to get 10% of our numbers in policing now. So we really are working hard to attract more women to policing. But my number one hero absolutely is my mother.
You know, and speaking about women in policing, and without going into much detail, I just must imagine that being a young woman starting out in the police academy or policing was probably pretty tough for you. How did you work through some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think it's tough generally, and I think for women it is a little bit tougher. I think what helped me was I was a little bit older. I was like 28 when I came on. I already had the military behind me, so I had, I kind of knew the drill. So that was okay. But I also found just really trying to find myself in policing, and I tried a number of different things. I tried acting like the guys. I tried being all these different people until I found, my sweet spot is being me, right? Being a strong communicator, treating people with respect. I mean, that is just the foundation of everything that I do. And I really think that when it comes to my role and what I found here is that I'm not going to please everybody. And where I go for is that the sweet spot in the middle, the 80%. There's going to be some people that love me no matter what. There's going to be some people that I can't please no matter what. But if I focus on the reasonable people in the middle, right, and really treat people with respect, be a good communicator, make sure we're explaining things, people get on board. And, there are some challenges, but I think that is just life in general.
Did you ever have a moment in your career, early on in your career, where you said, you know what, this is just not for me. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to go do something else.
So funny. So no, I can't say that I wanted to quit. And it's funny, and this is more of I think a generational thing, right? I almost envy people come on and say, yeah, no, I don't like this, I'm leaving. I'm like, how do you leave that? How do you just leave a paycheck and just go and try to figure something out? Like, that really wasn't in me. But I have asked myself, am I in the right place? Should I think about moving on, whenever? So I think there's a constant kind of reflection just to say, am I making progress? Are we doing okay? Always making sure that I'm, tuned into my team, tuned into your sister is, oh my gosh, what a blessing she is. Am I doing my job? Are we progressing? And I think at some point, particularly in this role, you do have a shelf life. And I have to figure 3 to 5 years, it might be time to move on. Be as effective as you can in the amount of time that you can, and then don't be afraid to try new things.
You have 2 amazing sons. What do they think about their mom being the top cop in Cambridge?
It's funny, they don't say a lot about it. I think one son I know, he's talked about me to his friends, and I've heard from their parents. So I believe that they're proud, but they're 16, so they barely, I have to pull everything out of them. Talk to me, please. But I think they're proud and they're fine, but they will never tell me.
I have a 14-year-old. I feel your pain. We're going to take a quick break. More with Cambridge Police Commissioner Christine Elow. When we continue, you're listening to the PowerPLAY Show.
Did he have vitiligo, and is that why he lightened his skin?
The king of pop had vitiligo.
I'm a Black American. I'm proud to be a Black American.
And he allegedly bleached his skin.
I have a skin disorder. There is no such thing as skin bleaching.
Let's get to the fact versus the fiction here.
He has a serious skin condition, which I have witnessed.
When people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
My world ended that day.
Because what was your biggest fear?
I'm just too fabulous for that. All of this chocolate, milk chocolate, you're saying may go away?
That's all I did was watch TV, go to the refrigerator, watch TV, go to the refrigerator. That's it. That's all I did. I wasn't doing nothing. I was staying in the house.
Next to photos, it's like, and then me, the spotted one. So it was hard, absolutely.
This was gonna be it. That there was not going to be anything else out there to help me because I had already tried everything.
Why me? especially in mornings when you had to do life again each day. I was like, why me?
Vitiligo is an autoimmune disease.
The immune system, which we know fights viruses, and vitiligo, it's the skin color cells.
Leading to white patches, often in exposed areas such as the face or hands. When patients come in, sometimes they just want to know what's going on.
Is this something that I can catch?
And once we know what causes vitiligo and what drives vitiligo, we can design treatments and be able to treat patients.
The creators of 100 Years, 100 Voices of Faith bring you more than our skin. The compelling stories of 5 women living with vitiligo. It's the story of more than the skin you see. It's the pain, depression, suicide thoughts that come knowing that with their pigmentation, a bit of humanity also faded away.
I was upset. They used to stare and look and point.
How is the disease affecting them?
I didn't want to be around people.
Not leaving their homes because it so deeply affects them.
The view of all the people and them.
There's no way you can hear those stories and not get personally involved.
Oh, were you burned in a fire? And I looked at him and I said, does this look like a burn?
And through their anger and pain, they're able to stand strong with the support of their communities to tell the world what they want you to know about what it means to live with vitiligo.
The journey will be hard.
They should not, make fun of people.
It's not just spots on your skin. This is affecting this.
We got to speak for those that don't want to speak, for the voiceless.
My biggest hope is that it encourage, lift up, pick up someone that's down in the dumps. Our aim is to continue on this upward motion, making it happen.
More than our skin.
Now, back to the PowerPLAY Show.
We're back with Cambridge Police Commissioner Christine Elow. Commissioner, I want to get into community policing. We all hear that phrase, but tell our audience what community policing means to you.
Sure. And it really hasn't changed. I will say it has changed and it hasn't changed from when I got hired. I got hired under a community policing grant. But then what community policing was, Tonya, it was just about going out and policing with a smile. It was the same old policing where you're like, hi, here's your ticket with a smile. Hi, I'm arresting you with a smile. And that's not true community policing. What community policing is really when police officers work in partnership with the community to address quality of life issues and safety concerns. And we're still doing that, but where it has changed is how we address those quality of life issues. When I first came on, what we're doing, basically, it was all about enforcement. So when we went to a call, if there was a crime that was committed and it was an arrestable offense, that person was going to jail. Now what we're asking our officers to do is really look at the situation with a wider lens. What are some of the underlying conditions? Who do we have to work collaboratively with to help solve some of these issues? Do people need to be connected to resources? What are the supports that they need? So it really is about addressing quality of life issues in the community. And another big thing that is really important is we need to recognize that not everybody has a trusting relationship with the police. And we really need to make sure that we heal some of the relationships, particularly in our Black and Brown communities. We have to acknowledge the history of police in this country, right? And heal from that. And that's going to take some work. And again, as I said, arrest is not the first response, it's one of our last. And we're really looking to connect people to resources or services as appropriate.
You and I are roughly around the same age, at least in the same generation. And how has the Cambridge community changed from when we were growing up? For me, Cambridge looks very different to me. So how does that change look for you, and how have you changed policing as a result of the change in communities in Cambridge?
Yeah, it has changed policing and our hiring practices. I mean, I remember growing up here, we had a very robust working class population. That is gone, Tonya. And we basically have the very rich. I mean, I think the median house income in Cambridge is 1.5 million. 1.5 million. So you have the very rich, and then we have the poor, and our middle class again is gone. And so that changes just what we're doing. And then the other piece is our school population. I think there was a data point that I looked at where 25% of our population is turned over every 5 years. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic shift, right? So how do you build those relationships? And so that has an impact, because also we are a data-driven police department. So where we send our resources is where the crime is, right? So we are disproportionately policing in our poorer communities that are disproportionately Black and brown.
What makes community policing successful and what makes it fail?
Yeah. In a word, it's trust, right? It's having those relationships in the community. When you have trusting relationships, then, people will work with you. And I'm going to use, gun violence for an example. So we're dealing with some situations in the city where one particular neighborhood has had a disproportionate amount of gun violence. And when it comes to how we think about community policing, right, and how we approach gun violence in this community, and really giving our officers the direction where we have to be very surgical when it comes to how we're addressing it. If we go into a community and basically we're stopping everybody who's a Black male with a hoodie because that's the description, we're going to alienate that community and not build trust. So really it is about going out, making sure that the community sees us as a resource, building trusting relationships in communities that maybe have not traditionally trusted the police, and identifying, and we have a good handle on who it is that are picking up the guns, and let's deal with those individuals and not alienate the entire community through aggressive enforcement measures.
I think what has made the City of Cambridge Police Department very successful is the fact that we know the officers. Like, I think I know half of your of the police officers on the staff. And I know them because of they talk to you, they introduce themselves to you. And yes, full disclosure, I did work for the city for 3.5 years, but even prior to that, I have a slew of friends on the police department. And I think that helps. Like if I need something, if something is happening, I have cell phone numbers, I can call people. And I really think that is such a wonderful way to have police in the community, that they're your friends. We hear so much of the negative stuff, but I really just commend the City of Cambridge for getting it right,
Yes. It's interesting. And we did a round table with the school committee, and our school resource officers were there. And what came across to me when each of the school resource officers spoke was, we're so much more than the police officers in this community. We are part of the community. They talked about relationships that they have, and they coach, and they take, students to different, events, and they do all of these things. So I really do feel like it is critical for the police to be engaged in part of the community. We're not separate from. And I think the model we have here, where we are recruiting from the community, is really a recipe for success. When I look at our police department, more than half of them, at least some years ago, I went to high school with.
Right.
Now, a lot of them are retiring now, but yeah, we are part of this community and really care deeply about policing the right way.
Your work has also included working with the youth in Cambridge. And although Cambridge doesn't have as many challenges as, say, your sister city, Boston, it still was important for you personally to be involved with working in the youth. Why?
Thank you for that question. And it really began from before I became a police officer. I was a youth worker, and I worked at the Area 4, now the Moses Teen Center. And I remember when I was being backgrounded, some of the young boys, and they were all of them were African American. When they found out that I was going to be a police officer, they had said to me, like, Christine, what are you doing? Why are you going to become a police officer? And I asked them why they didn't want me to. And they said how the police were mean to them, how the police didn't like them. And that really guided how I wanted to engage when I became a police officer was really making sure that our young people first trust us, right, and see us as a resource. And then I also think it's really important that, adolescence is difficult, right? And we need to make sure that we can, see our young people growing up, going through the difficult time in adolescence, and making sure that we're providing supports for them and for their families so that they can come out on the other end. I was a teenager in this city. I know how hard it is. I don't know how hard it is to be a young man who is having some other challenges, and maybe somebody's, saying, well, pick up this gun and we can solve this. So how do we really proactively put our arms around our young people and provide them with the resources and support that they need? And I will also say, for the last thing, selfishly, recruiting, right? We really need more. I think for this police exam, we had 30 people sign up. When I took the police exam 27 years ago, we had thousands of people on the list. 30 people signed up. So we are going to struggle to hire the numbers that we need to hire. And, in our Black and brown communities, if they don't see the police as a resource or somebody that they trust, they're not going to want to become a police officer. So how do they understand how we're policing in Cambridge, how policing is shifting, so that maybe they can see themselves as a police officer? I do think this is a way out of poverty for many people, and it's an honorable profession.
We all lived through the Black Lives Matter movement, which stemmed out of unarmed Black and brown men and women being gunned down at the hands of some police officers. And I imagine that was, and in some instances continues to be, a very difficult time in terms of being an officer. Can you talk a bit about that and how you are helping your officers kind of manage those really tough feelings that people have against police officers?
Really tough. And that is and this is where I feel like I get just a sense of purpose, right? Is there, and I feel like if any place can get it right, it is, the Cambridge Police Department, really educating our officers on the history of police in this country and understanding the impact that people who wear this uniform have disproportionately on communities of color. I've heard the argument, of, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter. And I really think we have to have the difficult conversation here in this country that said, Blue lives have always mattered in this country, right? Black lives have not always mattered in this country. And to call attention to the deaths and the disproportionate amount of deaths of young Black males at the hands of police officers. And as you said, females, we have to understand the whole implicit bias, right? And how that impacts us. How do we see, Black people in this country? Do we view Black people as a threat? And how do we unpeel that back, right? And retrain our officers about, that implicit bias that has started here 200 years ago, right? It's here, it's in this country, it's weaved in the fabric of this country. How do we unlearn that? And that's something I'm really passionate about doing. And it's gonna be a long process. And I can't say it's gonna happen in my next 3 years, right? This is going to precede me, or it's going to be, it's still going to be here after I'm gone.
To circle back, when you talked about the youth and not trusting the police, and then we have this Black Lives Matter movement, and tensions are still pretty high, because unfortunately we're still hearing and seeing instances of things not working the way they're supposed to. Yeah. What can you say, if you were to speak to the youth right now in Cambridge about how they can learn to gain those relationships with police officers, what would you say?
So there's a couple of things, and I really feel that's a really interesting question, because one of the things that I say to my children, right, is that if you have an interaction with an officer, what I want you to do is follow the officer's direction, right? If they're asking you to do something, even if you don't think it's appropriate, get their name, identify where you are, get their badge number if you can, and then come home to me and I'll be your advocate. So what I would say to a young person who has an interaction with the officer is just be cooperative on the street, get their name, the time of the interaction, and we want to hear about it. I'm telling officers the conversations that we have internally is that, most of the people in our communities are good, hardworking, law-abiding citizens. We really want to make sure that, how we do our enforcement, that we're not over-enforcing, in places where we're alienating people. So, but we also, if we have an incident of gun violence, we have to investigate that. But you do it by treating people with respect and dignity. So I want to hear from young people if you do not feel like you were treated with respect and dignity, and what do we have to do to kind of change that and improve.
We're going to take another quick break. More with Cambridge Police Commissioner Christine Elow when we continue. You're listening to the PowerPLAY Show. Hi, I'm Tonya McGrath, producer and director of the upcoming film project, More Than Our Skin. I decided to make this film because I saw a need to let the stories of those living with vitiligo be heard. That it's more than the spots you see. It's the feelings, the depression, the community, and the lives of those impacted by an autoimmune disease with no known cure. More Than Our Skin plans to tell the stories of a diverse cast of people who are willing to share their journeys, many for the first time, as they make positive steps to bring understanding, inclusivity, and acceptance to this widely misunderstood disease. It is my hope that this film will change lives, not just for those with vitiligo, but for the wider audience who will understand once and for all that it's more than our skin. Thank you.
Now back to the PowerPLAY Show.
As we start to wind down, I'm interested in your work now as police commissioner. What are some of the responsibilities that you face now?
So there's a lot. I mean, one of the things that I think that I want to improve on is around our accountability. And this really weaves into what we talked about in the previous segment. We're just getting feedback from our community members on how we're doing. There's one thing for me to come on your show and talk about how there's all these alternatives and we should be treating people with respect and dignity, but I need to know what's happening on the ground. So one of the things that we're doing is getting feedback from our community members. We have feedback cards that we're really positioning or putting out, particularly in those communities where, due to data, right, we have the most where we spend the most time. So relationships with the community, really big deal for us to really heal from historical injustice. We need to acknowledge it and heal from that and build trust, particularly in those communities where we're spending the most time. Increasing our transparency, another big responsibility, making sure that the data that or the interactions that we're having are front facing so the community sees exactly what we're doing, who we're stopping, how long we're stopping them, really a big deal. The safety of the community, getting our handle around this gun violence is such a big deal. We want to grab these young people before they're picking up guns. We're seeing guns now in the hands of 14, 15-year-olds. It's heartbreaking. So how do we support those young people and their families? Another big piece, officer wellness and resiliency. To your point, this is a challenging shift for police officers. A lot of them, they might not have signed up for policing as it's changing right now. And how do we do that in a way that they understand and doesn't alienate them? They didn't do anything wrong. Policing is changing, right? So we just need to make sure that they have the information that they need to shift. In succession planning, want to make sure that when I leave, that there's other women and other women of color that are in the pipeline to take over for me at some point. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And, just personally, what are some of the goals that you have as police commissioner? And what are you hoping to achieve in your tenure?
And for me, it is, Tonya, if I can help our officers understand and really be that bridge, understand the history, particularly again in communities of color. That is something I'm so passionate about. And I feel like that is, that's still a huge, if I can do this in a way that doesn't alienate my police officers or alienate my community, to come in with this really fine balance of having our officers understand the goal, improving outcomes, particularly for some of our marginalized communities, building trust in our communities of color, huge goal of mine, huge. Yeah, I would say that's it.
It goes without saying that you did make history. And when you think about making history as the first woman to run the Cambridge Police Department, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, girl, I want to represent, right? I want to do this right, I want to serve as a role model, not just to other women, but, that you can lead an organization that is predominantly male, treat people with respect and dignity, have compassion and empathy, be a good communicator, be a little goofy, have fun, right? You can be a mom, you can be a single mom, and you can still have a work-life balance, So I come to work and I go home and I make dinner for my kids. I take my son to school and I come to work and I lead this organization, then go home and make dinner for my son. So you can have this balanced life. As a woman, as a man, and with their family.
Yeah. But, your name, Christine Elow, will be in the history books of the city of Cambridge, and so I think that
I hope it's all good in the end.
It's all
good.
It definitely will be. Commissioner, what do you do for fun?
Oh my gosh. So I love to cook. So yeah, I don't know how good I am at it, but I love to cook. And then I de-stress through exercise. I run kind of high. So running, any sort of cardio, anything to kind of, as you can tell, I have a lot of energy to wear me down a little bit. So exercising and cooking is my two best things.
Commissioner Christine Elow, I want to thank you and personally congratulate you on your well-deserved appointment. As a Cantabrigian myself, I can say my hometown is in excellent hands.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tonya. Thank you for having me.
Remember, you can listen to past episodes of the PowerPLAY Show wherever you subscribe to podcasts, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, and now Pandora Podcasts. You can also watch our shows on YouTube. Simply search the Hull Bay Productions Media channel and be sure to subscribe so you always know when we're live. And we air each Saturday at 5 p.m. on BroncoEyeRadio.com. So tune into a new episode of the PowerPLAY Show each Thursday wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or on our YouTube channel by searching the Hull Bay Productions Media channel, or simply visit our website, thepowerplayshow.com. I want to thank you for tuning in this month as we celebrated Black excellence. Next month, I celebrate women in my Empowering Women series. I will be highlighting the 5 incredible women being featured in my upcoming film documentary, More Than Our Skin. So tune in next week as we begin our Empowering Women series. Until next time, I'm your host, Tonya McGrath, and thank you for tuning in.